السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, the talk won't be too long because of the haqiqah, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. As you heard, the topic is about al-a'mal al-qalbiyya, or the deeds done by the heart in Ramadan. And we may be a week away from the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أن يبلغنا Ramadan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us witness the month of Ramadan, and to help us and to guide us in the month of Ramadan to fulfill the duties and to be among those who are those who receive the pleasure of Allah and attain the real fawz and attainment in the month of Ramadan, to be among those who are freed from the hellfire and from those who are blessed in the month of Ramadan. And this is one of the things that Salaf al-Salih, the early generations of Islam, they used to do these types of things before the month of Ramadan. And it's been the way of the ulama in the month of Sha'ban, where they would teach the ahkam of as-siyam, the rulings of fasting and things of that nature, for people to be prepared for the month of Ramadan. And there are so many different things to be mentioned, but this is specifically with regards to the importance of the heart. If we look at the ayat of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that is related to Ramadan and fasting, because this is why we fast. We don't fast to feel for the poor. We don't fast to be healthy. We don't fast to get together and eat. We fast because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to fast. That's why we fast. Benefits, endless benefits. Yes, you feel for the poor and all of this. But why we fast? Because the wahy from Allah. That's what makes us do anything in this life, is the revelation from Allah, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So when we look at the ayat of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you would find the deeds or the importance of the heart is very clear. And since the foundation of any actions to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to come from the heart. And one of which is إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا إلى أجسامكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at your physical appearance and your image, but rather look at your hearts and your actions. And for the deed to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to be sincerely done for the sake of Allah. And it has to be according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If it's missing one of the other, then the deed is rejected, it's not accepted. So if someone abstained from eating and drinking during the month of Ramadan with fasting, but it's not sincerely for the sake of Allah, there is no benefit in this. And the same thing, it has to be according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So al-ikhlas is one of the actions of the heart. Just the fact that the ayah in the Quran, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون, that all you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you the way that it's been prescribed for those who before you, لعلكم تتقون, so that you be among the people of taqwa. Where is the place of the taqwa? The Prophet ﷺ, he pointed at his heart 3 times, and he says, التقوى ها هنا, التقوى ها هنا, التقوى ها هنا, meaning in the heart. So the place of the taqwa is in the heart. And one of the objectives of fasting and ibadah is to be among the people of taqwa. So it shows again the importance of the heart. One of the things that we have to be warned against, and that's why we're talking about it now. There are 2 things, as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said, and he said, حذاري, that means be warned of 2 matters. And we talked about that before, because it has bad outcome. He said حذاري من أمرين لهما عواقب سوء. 2 matters has evil and bad outcome to them, and that's by looking at the nusus, at the text, at the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Serious matter. The first one is رد الحق لمخالفة هواك. If you reject the truth because it opposes your desire. The truth is before the desire, before ourselves, before anything. The haqq is the haqq. And the heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the heart. Does the heart has the eagerness to be upon the haqq, to be upon the truth that is only to be known from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the heart is corrupted? The heart has conditional statements when it comes to the haqq, to the truth, desires, things of that nature. So never to reject, and this is something that should be established in the heart, never to reject the truth because it opposes one's desire. And the desire can be a religious desire, can be your group, be your people, your forefathers, whatever there is. And the punishment of that is that the person would have his heart inverted, doesn't able to see what is good from what is evil anymore. فإنك تعاقب بتقليب القلب. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in the Quran, وَنُقَلِّبُ أَفْئِدَتَهُمْ وَأَبْصَارَهُمْ كَمَا لَمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهِ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ وَنَذَرُهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. The verse talks about the disbelievers in the disbelieving category of things, and it applies also for in the sinful categories of actions. So which means we changed their hearts and their eyesights, meaning for them not to be able to see the truth as they disbelieved in it in the first time. So this is warning. If a person rejects the truth because it does not fit his desire, the punishment is the heart becomes sealed, inverted, not able to see the truth anymore. And that person can, this is far worse of a punishment than someone that is committing sins. Because in this case, a person, he would see what he's doing as good when it's not. He thinks that he's upon the haqq when it's not, because he rejected the haqq based on his desire. The second thing which also apply to us in these days is when someone would not take care of the matter when the time of it comes. He says, التهاون بالأمر إذا حضر وقته. The waqt of the ibadah. And this is, we witness that every day in our life. And this is all, again, it's the importance of the heart before the ibadah. Whether it's before Ramadan, before the salah. The time of the salah is approaching. The time of the salah comes. Where is your heart? Where is the heart? If a person belittles the act of worship that its time already came, then this is a dangerous thing for the heart. So the waqt, the time of the ibadah arrived. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, He made the salah al mu'minina kitaban mawquta. It has a prescribed time. If the sun rises, Fajr is too late. If time of Asr comes, Dhuhr is too late. So the salawat, as an example. So the time of Fajr salah starts. Where is the heart? Where is the heart in this? Where is the importance of the salah? It is not shown on one's face, on one's actions. This is the outcome of what's in the heart. The heart has the exaltation of this, and Allah sees what's in the heart. So when someone does not take care of the matter when time it comes, what happened? And the same thing can be applied for Ramadan. Ramadan is approaching. The acts of worship that should be done in the heart is that we want to make sure by the will of Allah, by the help of Allah, that we take advantage of it. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us alive to fulfill the duties of Ramadan physically and non-physically, and not to take it lightly, not to make the month of Ramadan the month of socializing and enjoying oneself. No, there's a month, there's wahy came down, so we want to apply the wahy. We want to follow the revelation from Allah, the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to the best of our ability. If someone, his heart has that weakness in it, what's the punishment for it? ثبتك Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you lazy. When we complain that in Ramadan we don't find this help, one of which is because we're not taking maybe the Ramadan as serious as it should be. The heart. The heart, when it gets this important in it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees what's in the hearts of the believer. He wants to be the best in Ramadan. He's sincere about this. Then he take the means, the easy means, the means that is in his capacity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help him. Because otherwise a person would be made, the matter becomes made difficult for him. And he says, وَأَقْعَدَكَ عَنْ مَرَضِيكَ, that he would make you sit back from the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the commands of Allah. Where does that come from? There's an ayah in the Quran, فَإِذْ رَجَعَكَ اللَّهُ إِلَى طَائِفَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسْتَأْذَنُوكَ الْخُرُوجِ فَقُلْ لَن تَخْرُجُوا مَعِيَ أَبَدًا وَلَن تُقَاتِلُوا مَعِيَ عَدُوًّا إِنَّكُمْ رَضِيتُمْ بِالْقُعُودِ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ فَاقْعُدُوا مَعَ الْخَالِفِينَ. Even though the verse is about the hypocrites, The same thing, major hypocrisy versus a sign of hypocrisy, that a person, the punishment can be accordingly, not a punishment like those who have major hypocrisy, but a person might be able, alhamdulillah, to fast, or if he's not able to fast, he's excused. He fulfilled the 5 daily salah and things like this. He's doing the obligations, right? But there's level of being let down in the virtues of the month of Ramadan, right? So all of that as a result of what's in the heart, and one of which is this tahawun, this taking the matter lightly, not exalting it. And as always, we should test our hearts. We should constantly work on our hearts and to test our hearts. If it's a month, 29 or 30 days, you will get every day $1 million. If you do certain things, nobody will sit back. Everybody will take the matter very serious, prepare for it the whole year. And it's very obvious. The physical test, it's by the mercy of Allah, it's good because it exposes really what's in the hearts. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, if you give them the million versus not to miss Ramadan, they would definitely take advantage of Ramadan. And this is basically how to cure our hearts from the diseases of it and how to prepare our hearts. And that is basically to attach our hearts to the hereafter. So these two things, when it comes to rejecting the truth, if it opposes one's desire, something that we have to live with for the rest of our life and to keep on referring back to it. Versus also if the waqt of something, if the time of something comes, then we have to do something to our hearts to exalt the matter in our hearts, because there's Quran recited, a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the verse, when they said to the Prophet ﷺ, when they said back, they did not go fight with the Prophet ﷺ, the ayat came down, you would never go out again to fight with the Prophet ﷺ, the hypocrites. Why? Because they were pleased to stay back the first time. So it's a punishment for them. So to give the matter its importance. And whoever is safe from these things, from these two things, he is safe by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the second point, and this is how the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed their hearts to be the best generation ever brought to mankind. When we see the Quran that was revealed in Mecca, for example, what was the subject of the matters in the Quran in Mecca? Before the obligations came, matters of belief. Correct? Most of it, there was less ahkam and more matters of belief. The pillars of al-Iman, the belief in Allah, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. And the pillars of al-Iman, the ayat and the many ayat that talks about the Day of Judgment. And that's how their hearts were purified. That made the matter easy for them whenever there is a ibadah, because of the attachment to the hereafter. But the hereafter is one thing. The other thing is salamatul mu'taqad, to have sound belief. The aqidah has to be sound. If the aqidah is not sound, that means the heart is corrupted. That means whatever is built on this corrupted aqidah will be corrupted also. Right? And the ikhlas where the person gets the rewards as how the ikhlas and the sincerity of one's intentions. This ikhlas, if the heart has a space in it to turn to other than Allah, right? Then the ikhlas is not pure, is not clear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that means when we have the aqidah is a serious matter. That's the foundation of the religion. Where is the place of the aqidah? Not al-iman. Al-iman is very comprehensive. Al-Iman is in the heart, in the speech, in the actions. This is the Aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah. Increases and decreases, increases with the good deeds, decreases with the bad deeds. The Aqeedah, the aspect of belief, believing in the unseen, where is the place of it? Is in the heart. So when someone believes in Allah, and this is the importance of the duruth of the Aqeedah, to learn the Aqeedah. What does it mean to believe in Allah? That He's the only one worthy of worship, the rububiyyah of Allah, His names and attributes, and to have the proper belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The turning away from shirk, associating partners with Allah, minor, major, someone wearing bracelet to be a mean to push evil from him, amulets, believing, not even, doesn't have to be that the person would go, believing that it's okay to go to a grave and ask the person dead in the grave to help. If someone believes this, that it's permissible for someone to ask a dead person to forgive his sin, this is major shirk. It's not an easy matter. Or even believing that it's okay to be next to a grave of a righteous man to make ibadah there. These types of belief, even if a person doesn't do it, it's corruption to the heart. It's corrupting the core of the religion. And you would find people debating over matters. Where is that in the Quran and the Sunnah? The Prophet ﷺ does not exist. There's no such a thing in the Quran and the Sunnah. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum never done these types of things. Right? And the grave of the Prophet ﷺ was with them, right next to them. And this is just one aspect of it. So to learn the proper matters of Aqidah so that the person's heart is upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. The hereafter, and to witness the hereafter always in our hearts, this is the main important action that needs to be established. And inshallah ta'ala we'll talk about al-yaqeen wal-ikhlas and so on. But this one part that, for the next few minutes, inshallah ta'ala, even though it's a detailed subject, but we need to make sure that when we're planning ourselves before the month of Ramadan, we need to plan for our hearts to implement the meanings of the hereafter, to keep on talking about the hereafter, reading the ayat of the Quran that talks about the hereafter, visualizing the hereafter, because the matter is very near, and it's nearer to us more than what we think. الجنة أقرب إلى أحدكم من شراك نعله والنار مثل ذلك, as the Prophet ﷺ said. Jannah is closer to you than your shoes, and hellfire is closer to you than your shoes. The matter is this is how serious the matter is. The moment of death comes, Darul Jaza, the recompense, no amal anymore, and it's either Jannah or the hellfire. And one of the great rewards from Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the heart of a believer always remembering the hereafter. It's a reward from Allah. It's a gift from Allah to be in that state. And the evidence of that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرْ عِبَادَنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ أُولِي الْأَيْدِ وَالْأَبْصَارِ إِنَّا أَخْلَصْنَاهُم بِخَالِصَةٍ ذِكْرَ الدَّارِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub, great messengers of Allah. Then when he subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about a favor that he bestowed upon them, Inna, indeed we akhlasnahum, we purified them, chose them, bikhalisa. Khalisa is such a pure gift and a favor from Allah that is, it shows the importance of it. If this is the only thing that a person is given the best thing in this life. What is it? Dhikr ad-dar. Dhikra, the remembrance of ad-dar, of the hereafter. They're given that. They're given that quality. They're always thinking, remembering the hereafter. And we, of course, we know what happens when someone is always remembering the hereafter. Not in general terms, but the specific details of the Day of Judgment. The moment of death, which is the first stage of the Day of Judgment. Even the stages before a person is buried. The questioning of the grave. The barzakh. Allah knows best how long a person will be in the grave. The blowing in the trumpet. The beginning of the Day of Judgment, the having life after death, the resurrection, the hashr, all stages, as-sirat, for example, al-mizan, the books, the book of deeds, all of that is mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and has details to it. So the heart is busy with these types of things, with the actions that we do, relating these matters to the hereafter. And because without this, the heart becomes hard, and the heart has to be. The heart is, as the ulama they say, is like the sponge. It has to have a medium. So if it's in this worldly life, it sucks whatever the medium that it's in. And if the heart is attached to the hereafter with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being recited with one's heart, then the heart will be affected accordingly. And one of the athar that we mentioned before, that Safiya radiallahu anha, she said that a woman came to Aisha radiallahu anha. And look how the Sahaba and the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, what is the concern? A woman came to her and she was complaining, لِتَشْكُ إِلَيْهَا قَسْوَةَ قَلْبِهَا. She was complaining that her heart is hard. She doesn't feel the softness of the heart that makes her the ibadah easy, the dhikr, the khushu', the remembrance of the hereafter, and so on. So she said to her, not a long lecture that we give like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with very simple words. She said to her, أكثري ذكرى الموت. Frequently remember and mention death, which is what the Prophet ﷺ said. أكثروا ذكرى هذه اللذات, frequently mentioning the destroyer of the desires, which is death. أكثري ذكرى الموت. And honestly, really, when we hear these things, we should test ourselves. If someone tells us that statement, what do we do? MashaAllah, nice admonition. Very good. Do we take these types of advices seriously? Or it's only contained in the masjid or in the lecture? And when we leave, do we do the same thing? Yes, of course, as the hadith of Hanzala radiallahu anhu, he said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when we're with you and you remind us, and this is another evidence of how they, with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they would remember the hereafter. Before we go back to what the woman did, the hadith of Hanzala has more than one narration, one of which is he said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Ya Rasulullah, inna idha ra'aynak. And this is an amazing thing. Allah gave them a level that no one after them received this level. He said, O Messenger of Allah, whenever we see you, can you imagine seeing the Prophet ﷺ in this life? Whenever we see you, رَقَّتْ قُلُوبُنَا, our hearts become soft. It was sufficient for them to see the Prophet ﷺ, the hearts are soft. And this is a favor. That's why the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, there's no like of them of the generations that came after. Just the fact that they saw what's the definition of the Sahabi? The one that saw the Prophet ﷺ and believed in him and died in that state. Even for a sa'ah, even for the shortest period of time. He's chosen by Allah to be among those who saw the Prophet ﷺ. He said that. And to follow up with this, we are commanded to follow the way the Prophet ﷺ. We're supposed to one another, when we see one another, we're supposed to remember the hereafter. We're supposed to soften our hearts when we see one another, right? Not to remember the dunya when we see one another. So رَقَّتْ قُلُوبُنَا, when we see you, O Prophet of Allah. وَكُنَّا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْآخِرَةِ. This is the riwayah in Musnad Imam Ahmad. And we become from the people of the hereafter. And you see the words وَكُنَّا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْآخِرَةِ, as if they don't live in this world anymore. We become from the people of the hereafter. وَإِذَا فَارَقْنَاكَ, and once we depart from you, O Prophet of Allah, أَعْجَبَتْنَا الدُّنْيا, we like the dunya. Then we start to like the dunya, which is a natural thing for the human beings. Whenever they leave the Prophet ﷺ, they would start to like the dunya. وَشَمَمْنَا النِّسَاءَ وَالْأَوْلَادِ, they become very close to their wives and their children. قال, the Prophet ﷺ said to them, لو تكونون أو قال لو أنكم تكونون على كل حال على الحال التي أنتم عليها عندي, if you are always in that حال, in that state that you are when you are with me, لصافحتكم الملائكة بأكفهم, the angels would shake your hands in the roads with their hands like this. وَلَزَارَتْكُمْ فِي بُيُوتِكُمْ, and the angels would visit you in your homes. Right? So that means this is not going to happen in this life. That means this is not how human beings are. You cannot be in that same level at all times. But the statement of the Prophet ﷺ is an interesting one, as the ulama, they said. What did he say to them? لو تكونون على كل حال على الحال. The word al-hal. If you are in that state, the state of what? The state of the heart. Not the state that you're seeing me. Right? The state that is present in your heart, which is رَقَّتْ قُلُوبُنَا, our hearts are softened. وَكُنَّا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْآخِرَةِ. That state, this is what is praised, and it has to be there. It has to be there. And yes, you detach yourself, you work, you go throughout the dunya matters, no sins or anything, but to always bring back the heart to the hereafter and to soften the heart. And the same thing, this is where in the other narration that is famous also from Hanzala radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet ﷺ says, نَكُونُ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. When he said, when Abu Bakr met him, and he was sitting and asking Hanzala, كيف أنت يا Hanzala? He says, نافق Hanzala. How are you, Hanzala? He says, Hanzala is a hypocrite now. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, Subhanallah, ما تقول? What are you saying? He said, and this is the shahid, this is the point of reference, نكون عند رسول الله. we will be with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. يذكرنا بالنار والجنة. He would remind us of the hellfire and the Jannah. This is what the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام is doing to the companions رضي الله عنهم, reminding them of the hellfire and the Jannah. حتى كأن رأي عين, till as if they are something that we see with our own eyes. To that extent. فإذا خرجنا من عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and when we go out from the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, then فنسينا كثيرا, with the matters of dunya we forget, the state is changed. And then Abu Bakr رضي الله عنه, I'm just making summary of the hadith, he says, then والله إني لألقى مثل ما تلقى, I have the same thing as you. So that means am I the same thing? Let's go to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام to complain, to see what's the cure to this. So when they went to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام and they told him their state, the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, والذي نفسي بيده إن لو تدومون على ما تكونون عندي وفي الذكر لصافحتكم ملائكة. That means if you continue to be in the same state of the remembrance. Remembrance of what? Of the Jannah and the hellfire, which is the present, the place of it is in the heart. So this is an act of ubudiyya to Allah, that we have to make sure that we are putting these things in our hearts. Instead of talking about the deeds of the heart, the most important one is, after the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the hereafter is occupying our hearts. We're witnessing, we're seeing the stages of the Day of Judgment in every action we do, in every matter. So going back to that woman, that she came to Aisha radiallahu anha, and she was complaining about the hardness of her heart, and she said, أكثري ذكر الموت, make frequent mention of death. She said to her, if you do that, يرق قلبك, your heart will be soft. يرق, right? Your heart will be soft. And that's also the hadith as we heard. If you make frequent mention of death, your heart will be softened. وتقدرين على حاجتك, and you will be able to have the power, the ability to fulfill your needs. What her needs is to make salah, to have khushu'. This is what she's complaining. Qasawatul qalb, that means less dhikr, less ibadah, things like this. So you will have the strength to fulfill your needs if you frequently mention death. So then the woman, the narration says, فَفَعَلَتْ, she did that. That means she went and she stayed for days like this, applying, taking these matters seriously. So it's not, again, I'm repeating this because we're all in need of this. The deen is make your salah only, or say this. Is there a dua where it's soften our hearts? And then you say the dua. It's not the physical actions. They used to ask, of course, the physical actions, this is the deen. But they would ask about these things. They would ask about things in their hearts. And they would apply it. Not as a reminder, or not as a, mashallah, it sounds good. No, they would take it seriously, and they would do some physical actions to make sure that their hearts are working accordingly. So she did, فَفَعَلَتْ. That means what? She frequently mentions death. She kept on frequently mentioning death to help her to make her ibadah and so on. So then the narration says, فَآنَسَتْ مِنْ قَلْبِهَا رُشْدًا. She then become comfortable. She felt al-uns. Al-uns from al-insan is when we're not created to be isolated in islands, but rather to be with one another, to feel comfortable with others, not to be lonely, basically. So now she felt that she's not lonely anymore. That means she felt the softness of her heart. So then what did she do? فَجَاءَتْ تَشْكُرْ لعائشة رضي الله عنها. She came back thanking Aisha رضي الله عنها. جزاكم الله خيرا for what she did to me. And what did she say to her? أكثري ذكر الموت. Your heart will be soft and you'll be able to fulfill your needs. So all of that is because of the hereafter. So therefore, when we say, inshallah, very brief, inshallah, but the subject of to have in our hearts this witnessing the many different things in the hereafter, one of which, for example, again, as the hadith, the ayat of the Quran that talks about the sirat, talks about the mizan, talks about many different things in the hereafter, and how the effect of the actions and the effect, the mizan, for example, the two balances of one in the good deeds and one in the bad deeds. So a person sees that in whatever good deeds that he wants to do, And when a person looks at the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and the rewards that are mentioned in the month of Ramadan, من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه من قام ليلة القدر إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. His previous sins will be forgiven. Don't fast the Ramadan إيمانا, would believe in it and in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on, and seeking rewards from Allah. Same thing with the Qiyam of Ramadan, the Taraweeh. And the same thing for Laylatul Qadr. And the surah of Laylatul Qadr, خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ, better than 1,000 months. And what is this life at the end? Everybody shall return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the heart, when it's occupied with these matters, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees what's in it, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that bestows the favor of making the person's life or his heart is alive to make the ibadah easy. And also it goes the other way around. The ibadah causes this to the heart. So fasting causes this to the heart. The salah causes this to the heart. Physical dhikr, even if the heart is not upon it. Salah, even if the heart is distracted, causes the heart to be purified. But it's really the subject of the hereafter. If we, on a daily basis, when we read the Quran and we see what's mentioned about the day of judgment and the Jannah and the hellfire and the seriousness of the matter that made their life completely changed because of the reality of it and what's coming ahead of us, and it's all affected by the deeds that we do. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who witness the month of Ramadan and to give us the best of the rewards in this life and in the here, and to be rewarded fully without having anyone to take the share from our rewards, meaning to make it sincerely for the sake of Allah. And to give us the reality of it and to guide us, inshallah. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, because of the time. Inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow we'll talk about some of the ahkam of the zakah, not the entire subject of the zakah. We cannot have this in one lecture, but mainly the things that are contemporary and the things that people are concerned about with the new matters, as basically just referring to the fatwa of the ulama in it, conveying what they said with all different things that people deal with, and some of the points that we need to pay attention to. And in Sunday from 6, inshallah ta'ala, till, which is right after Maghrib, till after Isha, we'll talk about some of the ahkam of fasting. We already went through some of this with Sheikh Nashat, and we're just reviewing some of the things and some of the ahkam. And then Wednesday and Thursday, some of the deeds done by the heart, the yaqeen, and the sincerity, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who learn the benefiting knowledge and act upon it, inshallah. Anything that is needed to be clarified? طيب بارك الله فيك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.